Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube and KSL NewsRadio. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. It's a BYU football game day eve. BYU, the number 18 Cougars, traveling down to Tucson to take on the Arizona Wildcats. First trip to Tucson since 2018. There is so much to dive into with this matchup, and we got to start things off with the weather. It's a big story for this matchup. In fact, it's the top story of the day.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
So the remnants from Hurricane Priscilla could produce 1 to 3 inches of rain this weekend in Tucson. The National Weather Service in Tucson laid out some maps of probability of 1+ inches of rain Saturday through Monday. The probability of that happening in Tucson, 44%, as you see on the graphic. Arizona head coach Brent Brennan, he was asked in his Thursday press conference about the rain, and he wasn't too worked up about it. He referenced that Arizona, they're like the mailman. Rain, sleet, or snow, they've got to show up and get to work. And that's similar messaging from BYU special teams coordinator Kelly Papinga. He's hyped for the potential for some elements.
Oh, yeah, we're ready. We're ready for the monsoon. Let's go.
You guys are doing to prepare for potentially heavy rain?
There's nothing really you can do besides, you can do some special teams wise. We've done a lot of wet ball drills, just making sure the snap, the hold, the kick, they're familiar with that with the wet ball because it is different. The ball's heavier, obviously, and so it's going to feel different when you snap it, when you get the hold, when you kick it. It's all going to be different. So they worked that today and yesterday. We won't work that the rest of the week, but just, we know it's pretty high chance. It looks like it's going to be heavy rain, and I think our team's up for that. They're excited, and I think they're going to be prepared for that, whatever environment they're going to be in. We love the elements. We're ready for it.
They're ready for the elements. Curious to see what impact that potentially has on this game between two teams that are pretty evenly matched in this contest. BYU comes into the game 5-0 overall, 2-0 in Big 12 play. Arizona 4-1 overall, 1-1 in the Big 12. Kickoff, of course, is at 6 o'clock. At least that's what we expect, barring all this weather. 6 p.m. Mountain Time in Utah, 5 p.m. in Arizona. But when you look at the matchup, some player availability notes for the Cougars. Marcus McKenzie, a special teams gunner, ace in the hole. He's out for this game. He got added to the player availability report. And then also Anisi Purcell, defensive tackle. He joins Jack Kelly on the doubtful section on the player availability report. So maybe we'll see more of Weber State transfer Kafusi Pafoke getting into that rotation for the Cougars at D tackle. But so much attention is going to be focused on Arizona quarterback Noah Fafita. You got to limit his ability to run the football. He's much improved in that regard. I still believe that he ideally wants to air it out, but he's becoming more of a complete quarterback this season. He's ran for 3 touchdowns this season. He's the 4th best passing quarterback in the Big 12 this season, in a year where the Big 12 prides itself on having what they call a quarterback club. So BYU's defense has to be on point, and without your top sack artist in Jack Kelly, that becomes a little more challenging, but that's where guys like John Talmoy Payau, Keanu Tanavasa, the edge rushers with Logan Latui, Bodie Schoonover, they got to come up big for BYU, and that front 7 has to play at a high level because Arizona is the worst in the Big 12 at allowing sacks. Now, Kelly Papinga also, along with his embracing the elements, he said sacks are overrated, but I think this is a game, even without Jack Kelly, that BYU could generate a pass rush. I do think Arizona's offensive line has gotten better watching that Oklahoma State game, but still, you got to factor in the opponent of who they're facing. Oklahoma State isn't anything to write about. So this could be a game, if you can get home and get to Fafita, that could be a really good thing. I'm really curious to see in this matchup who's able to run the football. Both teams, BYU has had a lot of success running the ball, 234 yards per game on the ground. Arizona 143.8. But I ask, who's going to be able to run, because both of the defenses are excellent in this matchup. BYU, allowing only 92.2 yards per game on the ground. For Arizona's defense, 97.6. So who can run the football? And whoever has the advantage there, I think is going to be able to come away with a victory in this one because of the elements. You got to think that's going to be more of a ground and pound football game. I still think both of these teams are going to be willing to pass the rock. I don't think they're going to completely negate that side of the offense. But when the elements are in play, running the football is a nice luxury. And for Arizona, it's Ismail Mahdi that you would assume would be the guy that they turn to the most. 5'9", 188 pounds. The Wildcats are the 13th best rushing attack in the Big 12. So very modest numbers. It hasn't been anything spectacular for Arizona this season. So, but the teams that can generate that rushing attack, I think will have the most success in this game. Arizona's defense, I will note too, very good at generating havoc this season. 26.1% havoc rate. And again, if you're not familiar with that stat, that includes sacks, tackles for loss, interceptions, forced fumbles, havoc, all of it rolled up into one number. Arizona's been pretty good. But hey, BYU's defense, of course, very good too. Both teams have had 7 interceptions this season. BYU, when you look at the numbers on the Cougs, 18 of the last 19 games, or excuse me, 17 of the last 18 games, BYU has generated at least 1 interception. Oddly enough, the one game that they didn't was the season opener against a bad Portland State team. But ever since, they've been back on track with generating those interceptions, which have become a calling card for BYU and their defense since last season. Also of note in this game, when you talk about the defenses, who are 2 of the best in the Big 12 and also nationally, I think that's what makes this game so interesting to me. Both teams, they don't give up many first downs. Teams have only generated 13.2 first downs per game on Arizona's defense. For BYU, they're only allowing 14.8 first downs in a given game. So chunk yardage plays could be huge in this game because if you expect to have methodical drives on these teams, probably not going to happen. So you've got to be able to get the big chunk yardage. And the nice thing for BYU is they've got some momentum on that front. Last week against West Virginia, BYU was having so much success generating those big chunk yardage, big plays. And that will help the Cougars. If they can get that explosive playmaking ability, whether it's through the air or on the ground with LJ Martin, who had such a strong start to the season earlier in the year with those explosive plays, 40-plus yard runs consecutively in consecutive weeks, that would be huge for BYU. And I think that's where getting into second and manageables will be key for BYU. Arizona's defense, 35% success rate on standard downs this season. So getting into a 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, I think that's going to be important. If you're in a 2nd and 11 against this defense, and I'm sure the weather and the elements will impact the crowd some, but I think that's going to be something that'll be of significance for BYU in this matchup. So many different things to size up in this matchup, which I believe really is 2 quality football teams that I think both should be nationally ranked right now. Honestly, I think Arizona, maybe you could say they should probably still be outside the poll, but if they beat BYU, they're going to catapult into the rankings. These are 2 good football teams squaring off, and Arizona looks at this as an opportunity, I think, to really springboard this program and give a stamp of approval under Brent Brennan and his new red line effort, execution, accountability mantra that he's instilled in his program, whereas BYU looking to maintain this culture of they just win. It's complimentary football. It's not glamorous, but BYU always finds a way and gets the answers. Because, again, I think people forget this. BYU's won 16 of their last 18 football games. This is not some team that rolls into a road game and is suddenly like, oh, man, hostile environment. How are they going to handle this? BYU knows how to win games. But, when element is added to the mix, it can be a little bit of a challenge. But the freshman signal caller and Bear Bachmeyer seems like he's up for the task as they get ready to take on the Wildcats. Let's take a break. We'll get to more BYU Arizona talk and breakdown, and I'll give you my score prediction as well here on Cougar Tracks on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. It's available on Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast, however you listen or watch the show on YouTube. It's available. So subscribe to the podcast. It would be greatly appreciated if you give a 5-star rating and a review. So last night, BYU basketball had its blue and white scrimmage, and I got to say it was a lot of fun to watch the team in action. It was a lot more eventful than honestly I was expecting. 2 halves of basketball, 12-minute halves with different lineups in each game. But we got a good sample size of what this BYU basketball team can look. And as you see the B-roll footage of the introductions, man, people were hyped to see AJ DeBonsa in action. It's real. It was just so surreal to see him. I know that we've been seeing the YouTube videos, all the content, all the hype videos and practice and things like that. But again, to see it in person inside the Marriott Center in a BYU uniform, it was surreal because the number 1 player in the country is a BYU Cougar. As you see this talented roster that goes beyond just simply AJ. It's Richie, it's Rob Wright, and the cast of characters that are on this team. It's a talented squad. The first half of action in this game, it was a tied game, 24-all. The notable stats from the first half of play in this one, AJ DeBonsa had 8 points, but more importantly, 5 assists in that first half. He is a willing passer, is AJ DeBonsa. I thought, shooting the basketball, I thought Richie was not his typical self. He was 1 of 5, 1 of 4 from 3 in the first half. And then in the second half, we did see what looked to be, you would think, 4 out of the 5 guys that would probably make up the opening night starting lineup for the Cougars. That was Kennard Davis Jr., Richie Saunders, Keba Keita, AJ DeBonsa, and then the 5th guy was Tyler Murruss. Rob Wright was held out, according to Kevin Young. That because he said Rob Wright was a little bit banged up, so they held him out. We did see Rob Wright in pregame warmups. He and Nate Pickens and Dawson Baker and Brody Kozlowski were all held out. So about 10 guys played in this scrimmage. But the white team, they had a big lead with that group that you would say would probably be majority of them being the opening night starting 5. They had a good lead, but then they let the team blue get back into it. I thought Alexei Kosic looked really good for the Cougars. He had 5 points. All that came from the free throw line, but I liked the pace of play that he had. I just really liked what I saw from Kosic. Hadim Mboop was someone that really impressed me as well. His tenacity on the glass, his effort. I had a lot more extensive breakdown and takeaways after the scrimmage last night inside the Marriott Center with Kyle Ireland, which I highly recommend you go listen or watch that on the KSL Sports YouTube. But I thought it was a fun night, though, all around. Marriott Madness, they only had a 3-point shootout. There was no dunk contest, which it's kind of common that hasn't been a thing, the dunk contest. But a 3-point shootout, there was some controversy. Initially, they awarded Tyler Murruss and Delaney Gibb. But then, after recounting things, Richie Saunders, who you see here in the video, he was on fire. Him and Mariah Hudgens from the women's team, they actually were the ones that came out victorious. But fun night overall to see BYU basketball back in action at Marriott Madness. It was so much fun, and I'm telling you, this team is going to be really, really good for the Cougars. And as we switch back to BYU football, it's not a holiday today, but it is a celebratory day for the head man of the Cougars, Kalani Sitake. It's his birthday today. Can you believe that? Kalani's birthday, October 10th, and it's a milestone birthday. It's significant, this birthday, Kalani Sitake's. He's turning the big 50, 50 for Kalani Sitake. That's so surreal to me to see that because, remember, 10 years ago when he got hired, He was one of the youngest coaches in college football. He was only 40 years old when he got hired to be the head man at BYU at his alma mater. Fast forward, he's already now at 5-0, 50. And in honor of Kalani's birthday, I wanted to roll out what I believe are the 5 best wins of the Kalani Sitake era. So since 2016 to modern day, to today, up to this point, the 5 best wins of the Kalani Sitake era, and I'll count them down from 5 to 1. Number 5, Boise State, 2019. Boise State was a nationally ranked team, number 14 in the country. And remember at that time, BYU was 2-4. Kalani Sitake was kind of on the ropes. You could say that Kalani's job was on the line, and the Cougars were turning to a third-string quarterback in Baylor Romney, and they pulled it off on a rainy night in Provo, 28-25. That was the lone loss for Boise State that season in the regular season. It honestly prevented them from going to a New Year's Six bowl game. That was a huge win for BYU and really helped their cause of getting to a bowl game, which was all they needed to ultimately get Kalani an extension. And look what's happened now ever since. If you don't have that game, I don't know if we see Kalani Sitake as the head man at BYU without that win. That was such a big win for Kalani Sitake. Number 4, BYU's Alamo Bowl win over Colorado, 36-14. And I put this one here because, one, the national disrespect that BYU was given going into that bowl game. Not necessarily from Colorado. It wasn't from Coach Prime. It wasn't from Shedeur Sanders. It was just the national media gave no attention to BYU. Like, don't even bother showing up, BYU. And then BYU comes out and absolutely hammers Colorado. And it puts, to me, an exclamation point on what was one of the greatest seasons in BYU football history. You're probably not going to put it above 84. Maybe you don't put it above 96. But number 3, I think it's in the conversation. And in large part because of the way they finished that season against a really good Colorado team with a Heisman Trophy winner, with a star quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, a star head coach in Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, so many things. And it was a crowd that was not pro BYU. And you just rolled in and put the hammer down. And it was an exclamation point on what was an incredible season. Colorado beating them in the Alamo Bowl. That's number 4. Number 3, you got to go back to 2018. BYU's win over Wisconsin. Number 6 Wisconsin, when the Badgers were viewed as a potential college football playoff team. BYU rolled in there with the jet sweeps and all. That got some national attention because of that. There wasn't much of a passing game. It was a ground attack with Squally Canada and then some missed field goals by Wisconsin. But that win was huge. Whenever you get the chance to get a win over a top 10 team on the road, I don't care what the circumstances are, that is a massive win. That 2018 season kind of played out what you would honestly expect. Mediocre year for BYU. But again, it was a sign that the 4-9 stench from the previous year in 2017, it wasn't going to last long. There were better days ahead for Kalani Sitake, and that was a sign of that. Turning the corner with that win over Wisconsin in 2018. Number 2, going back again to last season, Kansas State. The Cougs hammered Kansas State, number 13 K-State, 38-9. And I point to this game being near the top of the list because it was the breakthrough win in the Big 12. It was the moment where you said BYU can play and be a big-time team in the Big 12. Because up until that point, BYU was a cellar dweller in the Big 12 Conference after that first season. I mean, that first year in 2023, the learning curve was steep for BYU and Kalani Sitake in the Big 12. So many new players. It was a transfer portal push that year in the Big 12, that first season. 2024, they focused on roster retention and developing from within, and they had a chip on the shoulder. And they showed up and just hammered Kansas State 38-9. And the picks, and then Avery Johnson's talking about how classy the fans were, even when, they were blown away with how nice BYU fans were, and then BYU fans donated to Avery Johnson's charity and foundation. There were so many cool things that came from that game. The Taco Bell burrito. How could you forget that? It was an amazing game. Number 2 on my list of the 5 best wins of the Kalani Sitake era. And number 1, Utah, 2021. 26-17. Utah was in the top 25 in that game. BYU got the breakthrough. They ended the losing streak to the Utes, 9-game skid. And it coincided with the same weekend when BYU punched its ticket to the Big 12 Conference and got the official invite to the Big 12. One of the great weekends in BYU athletics history. And Kalani Sitake was the head coach of that game for the Cougars. I left out Utah last season because, gosh, I don't think that game was clean. I don't think it was a good product from BYU last season. I thought BYU played down to Utah, whereas BYU in 2021 against Utah, they pretty much dominated that game. It was a 9-point win, but it felt like it could have been more. Remember, Jaron Hall had that big run that got taken away. BYU just dominated Utah, and it kind of lifted that, I don't want to say curse, but just that feeling of, playing tight against Utah. It still happens. It's going to happen next week where both teams are it's going to be a defensive slugfest. But that was just a great moment for BYU, for Kalani Sitake, that again, man, the new era, the Big 12 on the horizon, a breakthrough win against Utah. Cougs haven't lost to Utah since 2019. That's 6 years ago. So getting that win was huge for Kalani Sitake and his program, and it just lifted a huge burden on his shoulders and his program. And they've been flying high, really, ever since. And happy birthday to Kalani, 50th birthday for the head man of the Cougars. Big 5-0 for Kalani Sitake. Taking our final break. I'll give you my score prediction next for BYU and Arizona right here on Cougar Tracks. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL Sports YouTube and KSL NewsRadio. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. It's a football Friday here on the show, so that means one thing. It's time to give my pick.
Score prediction. Will BYU come out on top? It's time for Mitch's score prediction for the next game.
I can't wait for this game. Can't wait to catch a flight down to Arizona. I hope I can stay dry. BYU in Arizona kicks off at 6 o'clock here on KSL News Radio. I'll have Cougar Sports Saturday coverage beginning with Kyle Ireland at noon. We're expecting to have Max Hall on the program coming up tomorrow here from Tucson. So looking forward to that. It's going to be a fun day on KSL News Radio on a game day for BYU in Arizona. And my score prediction, I've got BYU winning this game 27-24 over the Wildcats. I think this is going to be a game that's going to be close. And I think Arizona is going to test BYU for a full 60 minutes. It wouldn't shock me if Arizona won this game. It wouldn't. But I think BYU is going to put together a game-winning drive from Bear Bachmeier. That's my prediction here. Game-winning touchdown drive from Bear Bachmeier gives the Cougars a fourth-quarter victory over the Wildcats. I believe that both these teams are going to find a way to be able to still have some success passing the football. Look, Arizona's tough defensively on the pass. Second best nationally in team pass efficiency defense. They haven't given up a passing touchdown through the air this season. It's going to be challenging to pass the football, but I think BYU is going to make it challenging on Arizona's passing attack as well. So both defenses are going to have to get, they're going to be very challenging on these offenses, but I think there's still going to be an effort to pass the ball despite the weather and the limitations. But I think Bear Bachmeier puts together a gritty performance. I think the offenses have a little more success that I think people would maybe give them credit for, especially with BYU's, personnel at linebacker, a little bit of change up there with Jack Kelly being doubtful. I think, the offenses are going to put up a little bit more numbers than you would think with a game that's going to be impacted by the weather. And I think Bear Bachmeier adds to his aura. As Isaiah Glasker said a few weeks ago in Boulder, he's just got the aura. He'll add to that aura if he can get a game-winning touchdown, as I'm predicting, for this game against Arizona. He and the BYU football team were at the basketball scrimmage last night, right behind one of the benches supporting the basketball team. He's embracing himself at BYU. He gets on the Jumbotron, and everyone's cheering on Bear Bachmeier. So I think Bear adds to that aura and puts together a game-winning drive. Some players to watch in this matchup before we wrap things up. Genesis Smith for Arizona. He's that Bear defensive back position for the Wildcats. Keep an eye out for him. Traden Stukes, field cat position. They're really good. Watley at wide receiver, 22 receptions, 316 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Curious to see if the Arizona tight ends have any role in this game. They had a player in Kean Burnett who basically is going to redshirt and leave the team. And then, as I noted earlier, Arizona is 113th nationally in sacks allowed, giving up 14 this season, tied for last in the Big 12. And then finally, special teams. Kicker Michael Salgado Medina, 9 of 14 this season. Arizona ranks 15th in the Big 12 for field goal percentage at 60%. I'm confident Will Farron, I know he's missed 2, but I think he's going to get back to that superhuman nature too. And I think he'll have a big kick or 2 in this game. You pair that up with Bear Bachmeier, and my expectations for him, I think Bear gets maybe a couple touchdown runs on the ground, throws a big touchdown pass late. I think the Cougs come away with a victory, 27-24. That's my score prediction. Lock it in. We'll see what happens tomorrow in Tucson. That's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I hope all of you enjoyed it. Got to go catch a plane to get down there to Arizona to get ready for this game. So I will talk to you next time here on Cougar Tracks on Saturday night for some post-game reaction from Tucson. Looking forward to it. I'll talk to you then here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sport.